Thank you. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce everyone who's here. Oftentimes I fail to introduce myself. I'm Jen Schorn, Bucks County District Attorney. To my left is my colleague Tom Gannon, who is the Chief Deputy District Attorney in charge of our Firearms and Drug Unit. Behind him is Chief of County Detectives Greg Beidler. To my right, Assistant Special Agent in charge of Homeland Security Investigations, Spiros Karabinas. To his right, Regional Director with the Pennsylvania Attorney General's Office, Jim McCaffrey. And to his right, from the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, Inspector Matt Tier. And finally, to his right, my colleague, Chief of Appeals, John Fegley. I am proud to report today that thanks to the men and women that work in my office in the Drug Strike Force and the County Detective Division, along with agents from Homeland Security Investigations and agents with the Pennsylvania Attorney General's Office, with the assistance of the Postal Inspection Service, as well as the Louisville Metro Police Department, 6 men were arrested for running a bi-coastal drug trafficking organization in our area. The drug trafficking organization has been dismantled as a result of these arrests. The Byrne Drug Trafficking Organization, which is named based on the principal, Matthew Byrne, being the primary organizer of this trafficking enterprise, was responsible for acquiring, shipping, prepping for distribution, and distribution of methamphetamine and cocaine valued at approximately $5 million just over the last 6 months. Matthew Byrne and another member of the organization would fly out to California twice a month to supervise the acquisition of and the shipment of these dangerous drugs to locations in both Bucks County and Montgomery County. This was a business enterprise where the business model was to deliver dangerous drugs to individuals with addiction in our community. The individuals that were in this organization were motivated by greed and making a profit over other people's addiction and suffering. The investigators who worked this investigation, who continue to work this investigation, unearthed overwhelming evidence that established that this was incredibly profitable and also a multifaceted criminal enterprise. In parts, it was complex, but also in equal parts quite simplistic, in that the drug trafficking organization would ship pounds, and roughly in each shipment, approximately 25 to 30 pounds of methamphetamine and cocaine by hiding them inside of a large karaoke-style Bluetooth speaker. Those shipments would be received by their counterparts in Bucks and Montgomery County and would later be prepared for distribution to individuals in our community. The greed that these defendants possess knows no bounds. In fact, based on the extensive investigation and the fact that every lead, no matter how small, was followed, the detectives actually identified the fact that one of the principals in this organization resold the karaoke speaker at a community yard sale for profit. And an unwitting purchaser purchased that speaker, and thanks to the work the investigators did, they were able to recover that speaker and later tested that speaker. And in fact, it did test positive for the drugs that were previously contained within. One can only imagine how many lives were spared by the dismantling of this organization and the interception of these shipments. I hope the outcome of this investigation serves to warn drug dealers who traffic drugs into our community. They need to know that they will be identified, they will be caught, and they will be prosecuted. We will not tolerate criminal enterprises such as this in our community. I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Karabinas.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Good afternoon. My name is Spiros Karabinas. I'm an Assistant Special Agent in charge with Homeland Security Investigations here in Philadelphia. Today, as a result of the strong partnership that HSI Philadelphia shares with Bucks County District Attorney's Office, 6 members of a large-scale drug trafficking organization have been charged. Rest assured, the cross-jurisdictional mail shipment of dangerous drugs from California to Pennsylvania is a high priority for HSI and its partners, and we will continue to work vigorously to prevent them from being trafficked, distributed, and ultimately sold throughout our communities. This investigation originated when our DHS partners at CBP intercepted mail parcels of kilogram quantities of cocaine and methamphetamine destined for Bucks County and other areas throughout Pennsylvania. The hard work of our special agents, partners, and task force officers led to the identification of this large-scale drug trafficking organization with ties to other states, including Southern California. I'd like to thank the Bucks County District Attorney's Office, Liberty Mid-Atlantic HIDTA, and all the federal and state law enforcement agencies that contributed to today's success. Thank you.
Thank you. We're available for any questions. Yes.
So when were these drugs first intercepted and how? Because my understanding is that the drugs were often shipped through the mail, next day service, and it was hard for law enforcement to sort of keep track of it. How did you all intercept this?
Initially, the investigation began in the end of January of this year, and ultimately through intelligence gathering and fact-finding, they were able to identify the targets of this investigation and then later intercept some of the shipments. Some of the shipments did go through, naturally. So sadly, we can't account for how many people may have suffered as a result, or God forbid, suffered fatal overdoses as a result. But that's just why it's so important. You know, the collaboration, as Assistant Special Agent Karabinas said, it's so critical that we collaborate so that we can conduct investigations that take us from one coast to the next.
Do you have a sense of how long this went on, or when it may have actually these particular actors were involved?
It's a good question. The investigation is ongoing. For now, we are just identifying actions that span the last 6 months. So this investigation, rest assured, will continue for quite some time, and we'll have a better sense of just how long this organization has been in place.
So you got 2 other suspects?
2 are not presently in custody. They're California residents, but we're actively working with the authorities, federal authorities, state and local in California to apprehend them.
You bring them back to Bucks?
We will bring them back to Bucks. They will be extradited. I believe there's a question over here.
Yes, I got here about 2 minutes late, so could you tell me when this investigation kind of began, if there were any tips? And I see the karaoke machines. Were there any other articles that were being used to transport the drugs?
There were. Primarily, it was Bluetooth speakers, some which were karaoke style, and as you can imagine, as mentioned, sold at a community yard sale after the shipment of drugs were retrieved from that, where drugs were identified, presence of drugs still in that karaoke style speaker. There were also containers that were shipping type containers, and I believe a foam cooler, that were used to hide the drugs for the purpose of eluding police during shipment.
And one follow-up question to that is, do you anticipate to seize anything else from the leads that you've gotten here?
Meaning as far as asset forfeiture?
Yes.
Yes, we're working on seizing assets, and it's really important to understand that is so that, you know, the men and women in law enforcement can continue to conduct these complex investigations. So yes, we'll be in the process of looking at asset forfeiture as the investigation continues.
Excuse me if I'm asking the same question. How did these guys end up on your radar again?
We worked, I'm going to be a little bit circumspect in my response, but using shipment providers and the use of our canine partners in other police agencies help to identify suspected narcotics and drugs being shipped. And then again, the men and women behind me and who are not on camera here, who I have the pleasure of working with, do what they do, and they were able to identify the organization.
And these guys been cooperative at all why they got involved in this?
I can't speak to that at this juncture. The investigation is ongoing, and I want to maintain the integrity of the investigation. I believe there was another question?
Have any of these suspects had a criminal history at all before this?
I'm prohibited from speaking about their criminal history. Okay, anything further?
What was I going to say, any idea where they were selling these? Who was getting the coke?
Great question. You know, what's remarkable about this investigation, you know, my colleagues and federal and state partners literally mapped the movements not only of the individuals but the drugs starting from California to Bucks County, Montgomery County, and directly to the street level users in the Philadelphia and suburban region. Based on the outstanding police work, we know we can absolutely connect the dots. These drugs were getting into the hands of users, you know, shortly after being prepped for distribution in Bucks County and Montgomery County.
No fentanyl, right?
No, this was strictly methamphetamine and cocaine, but I should mention that methamphetamine, these are stimulants, and oftentimes we see an uptick in violent crimes when individuals are using stimulants like methamphetamine and cocaine. So very much a concern, the prevalence of these drugs in our community.
So there's been an increase of sex workers present in Bucks County recently?
Well, you know, that's certainly a passion of mine to try to identify and prevent trafficking of individuals, but we know the drug trade and the trade of sex, trade of human beings go hand in hand. So certainly we will keep our eyes and ears open if there's...
They're out there advertising very freely again, and it hadn't been like that for about 18 months. The last 6 months, like...
The beautiful thing about these partnerships is should we find information or intelligence that suggests a connection, we certainly get them to the right people. Thank you. All right, have a nice day.